3 days after I buried my husband, there was a notice taped to my front door. I thought it was another sympathy card at first. A lot of them had come that week, tucked into the storm door, slid under the mat, propped against the pot of lilies by the step. But this one was printed on association letterhead and sealed in a window envelope. And it did not say, "Sorry for your loss." It said, "Notice of covenant violation." It said the flower bed along my front walk was non-compliant, that I had 10 days to bring it into conformity, and that fines would accrue daily until I did. The flower bed was Walt's. He dug it the first spring we owned the house, 31 years ago, edged it in the same fieldstone he hauled home one rock at a time, and planted the purple irises his mother used to grow behind her kitchen in the mountains. He watered that bed from a hospital chair the last summer, by asking me to bring him pictures on my phone. And now, before the flowers on his grave had even wilted, a man named Roger Whitfield wanted it dug up and gone. I'm going to tell you how that turned out for Roger. Because he mailed his little violation notice to the one house on the street where the widow had spent her whole working life keeping the books for the county school district. He picked a fight with a woman who reads everything, down to the fine print, twice. He just didn't know that yet. To be honest, that first week, standing there with the envelope shaking in my hand, neither did I. My name is Carol, and I want you to understand who I was before any of this. I was not a fighter. I was a bookkeeper. For most of my life, my job was to sit quietly in a back office and make the numbers tell the truth. And I was good at it, and nobody ever noticed, which suited me fine. Walt was the one who talked to people. I was the one who balanced things. When he got sick, I balanced that too, as long as I could, until there was nothing left to balance. Our subdivision sits on the edge of a small city in North Carolina, a few hundred houses on curving streets named after trees that were cut down to build it. When Walt and I moved in, there was barely a homeowners association at all, just a mailbox fund and a Christmas party. Somewhere in the last decade that changed. And the change had a name, and the name was Roger. Roger Whitfield had been president of the board for 6 years running. He was maybe 50, always in a golf shirt, always with a clipboard, and he drove the streets slowly in a white sedan looking for things. Trash cans left out an hour too long, a basketball hoop, a truck parked on the street overnight, a shade of tan paint that wasn't on the approved list. He loved the word approved. He loved the word authority even more, and he used both of them the way some men use their fists. Most people just paid whatever he sent and looked away. I understood why. He controlled the dues, the fines, the architectural committee, and the newsletter, and he had a way of making your life small and expensive if you crossed him. The board was 4 other people who never said a word, and an annual meeting nobody went to because nothing ever happened at it except Roger reading Roger's report and Roger congratulating Roger. So I want to be clear that I did try to comply first. I called the management company the day the notice came, and a tired woman named Denise told me I'd have to email the request for a hearing. I emailed it. I explained about Walt, about the bed, about the irises, and I asked, politely, what exactly was out of compliance, because the covenants I'd been mailed years ago didn't mention flower beds at all. I got an automated reply. Then, 4 days later, a second notice, taped to the same door in the same envelope. Fines were now accruing. $75 a day. I need you to sit with that number for a second. $75 a day for irises. For flowers a dying man planted for his mother's memory. That is the kind of number that wakes you up at 4 in the morning, and for a few weeks, it woke me up every single night. And I lay there in a bed that was suddenly too big, and I did the math I'd done my whole life. 75 times 7. 75 times 30. I watched a debt grow in the dark over something that bloomed. I almost paid it. I want to admit that, because I think a lot of you would have, and there's no shame in it. I sat at Walt's desk with the checkbook open twice. What stopped me both times wasn't courage. It was the accountant in me. Because when I finally dug out the association's rulebook, the actual one, the long one nobody reads, I found the schedule of fines. And the schedule said fines could only be levied after a hearing before what it called an adjudicatory panel, where the homeowner had the right to appear and be heard. There had been no hearing. I had asked for one, in writing, and been ignored. That was the first thread, and once a bookkeeper finds one thread that doesn't tie off, she cannot stop pulling it. I started reading the covenants the way I used to read a set of books I suspected somebody had cooked. Not to win an argument, to find where the numbers stopped agreeing with the words. And they stopped in a lot of places. The rule Roger cited for my flower bed didn't exist. There was a setback rule for structures, fences, and sheds, and someone, at some point, had started applying it to plants. There was a fine cap our board had blown right past. There was a requirement that the board give notice and hold a hearing before recording anything against a home, and I had a bad feeling, sitting there at midnight, about that last one. The bad feeling was right. By the end of that summer, a letter came, not from the management company this time, but from the county. The association had recorded a lien against my house. My house. The one Walt and I paid off 2 years before he died. The one I was going to be buried out of someday was now encumbered for a little over $9,000 in fines and fees, and the letter used a word that stopped my breath: foreclosure. In our state, an association can actually take a home over unpaid assessments. Roger had turned a flower bed into a claim on the roof over my head. I sat on the porch steps that evening for a long time. I'm not going to pretend I was strong. I was 63 years old. I was alone for the first time in my adult life, and a man in a golf shirt had just threatened to take my house over my husband's irises. And it worked. It landed. I felt every ounce of what he wanted me to feel, which was small. I thought about selling. I thought about just handing him the check and letting him win so it would stop. And then a screen door banged across the street, and Sal came over. Sal Marino was 71, a widower himself, an army veteran who'd lived on our street longer than we had. He walked with a cane and a limp and a temper he mostly kept folded up. He sat down next to me on the step, grunting, and looked at the notice in my hand. And he said something I've thought about 100 times since. He said, he did the same thing to the Coopers before they moved, and the Nguyen's. He picks the ones he thinks won't fight. Widows, new folks, the tired ones. He looked at Walt's irises, purple in the last light. He said, he picked wrong this time, Carol. I told him I didn't know how to fight a thing like this. I said maybe I should just get a lawyer and sue. And that's when the second neighbor came into it. Because Sal said there was a young woman 2 doors down I ought to talk to first. Her name was Priya, and she was maybe 35, a mum with 2 little kids and a job as a paralegal at a firm downtown. She came over that same night with a legal pad, and she told me the truth that changed everything, which was this. Suing Roger, she said, would cost me money I didn't have and years I didn't want to spend. And even if I won, he'd still be president, and he'd just do it again to the next tired person on the street. You don't have a Roger problem, she said, tapping the covenants on my kitchen table. You have a power problem. He has all of it. And the thing about an association is, the power is supposed to be ours. We just stopped showing up to take it. She showed me 2 things in the rulebook that night. The first was that every member had the legal right to inspect the association's financial records. The books, the contracts, the bank statements. Not beg for them, inspect them. The second was that 3 of the 5 board seats were up for election at the annual meeting in the fall. 3, a majority. If the right people ran, and if enough neighbors showed up or sent in their proxies to make a quorum, the members could simply vote in a new board. And a new board could repeal a rule, release a lien, and fire a management company by a show of hands. I looked at those 2 facts for a long time. The right to see the money and the right to take the seat. And somewhere in there, sitting at my own kitchen table at midnight with a paralegal and a piece of scratch paper, I stopped being a grieving widow being pushed around by a bully, and I became a bookkeeper again. Because Sal had said Roger picked the ones who wouldn't fight, and Priya had said the power was supposed to be ours, and my whole career had been one long habit of asking a simple question that important men hated. Where did the money go? So the next morning, before I did anything else, I sent a certified letter to the management company, formally requesting to inspect the association's financial records for the past 3 years. Bank statements, the check register, the vendor contracts, the reserve account, all of it. It's boring. It's the most boring possible weapon. And I promise you, boredom is exactly what a man like Roger never sees coming. If you've ever had someone underestimate you because you were quiet, stay with me, because the best part of this whole story is still coming. And it isn't the flowers. The response to my records request told me more than the records would have. Denise emailed back that the documents were not available at this time. Then Roger himself called me, which he had never once done, his voice all warm concern, and told me there was really no need for all that he was sure we could work something out about your little garden, neighbor to neighbor. 6 months of ignoring me, and the second I asked to see the books, I was suddenly his neighbor. A guilty man will do a lot of strange things, but the strangest is how fast he gets friendly. I did not work something out about my little garden. Priya sent a second letter, this one citing the exact section of the state's planned community law that gave me the right to those records and set a deadline. And while we waited, we did the other thing. We started knocking on doors. Over the rest of that summer, I met my own street for the first time in years. I'd lived among these people for 3 decades and barely known them, and it turned out almost every one of them had a Roger story. The Hendersons had been fined for a wreath that hung 2 weeks past a holiday. A young couple had been cited for a child's chalk drawing on their own driveway. A retired teacher named Diane had paid Roger's fines for a year rather than fight. And when she told me the amount out loud on her porch, she started to cry, and then she got angry. And I watched something wake up in her that I recognized, because it had just woken up in me. We made a list. Not a petition, a list. Because a bookkeeper doesn't circulate feelings, she circulates a ledger. Names, addresses, the violation, the amount, the date. 72 households, and next to more than half of them, a fine. By the end of September, we had 3 candidates for the 3 open seats, and I want you to know who we were, because we were not a dream team. We were a retired bookkeeper, a paralegal with 2 kids and no time, and a 71-year-old veteran with a bad hip. That was the whole insurgency. That was the army coming for Roger Whitfield. What none of us knew yet, not even me, was that the records I'd requested were about to turn a fight over a flower bed into something the district attorney would end up reading. He found out, of course. Small streets have no secrets. And here is where Roger showed me exactly who he was. Because a decent man who'd made honest mistakes would have gotten nervous. Roger got smug. He put a letter in every mailbox on that same association letterhead, warning neighbors about a small group spreading misinformation and outsiders who want to raise your dues. He moved the annual meeting up by a month and changed the location to a church basement across town on a Tuesday at 7, betting nobody would come. And at the one board meeting I attended that fall, he looked at me across the room, at the binder I'd started carrying everywhere, the fat white one full of tabs, and he smiled and said, loud enough for the room, "Carol's got herself a little binder." People laughed, a few of them. And I felt my face go hot, and I sat down, and I said nothing, and Roger moved on, delighted with himself, absolutely certain he had won. I want you to hold that image, because I have held it for a year and it still makes me smile. Roger Whitfield, laughing at the little binder. He had no idea that by then the records had finally come, that they were sitting in that binder in tabbed and highlighted sections, and that I had spent every night for 2 weeks doing the one thing I was better at than anyone he had ever found. Reading numbers that were trying to lie to me. Because the money did not add up. It did not add up in a way that made the back of my neck cold. Here is what I found once the association was finally forced to hand over 3 years of statements. The landscaping. Our neighborhood paid a company called Greencrest Property Services almost $40,000 a year to mow the common areas and tend 2 flower beds by the entrance sign. And the invoices were round and vague and rising. Line items like seasonal enhancement and beautification for thousands of dollars, with no detail, month after month. I've paid landscapers. I've approved those invoices for a school district with 14 buildings. These numbers were wrong the way a suit 2 sizes too big is wrong. And when Priya ran the company name through the state's public business registry, the registered agent for Greencrest Property Services, the man who owned it, shared a last name with Roger's wife. I read it twice to be sure. He was her brother. That was the thread that didn't tie off. That was the flower bed the whole time, not mine, not Walt's irises. The one at the entrance, the one Roger's brother-in-law was paid to enhance for tens of thousands of dollars a year, while a widow got a lien for planting her own. And the fines, all those $75 days squeezed out of tired people across the neighborhood. They weren't even landing cleanly in the association's account. Some of them did. Some of them I could not trace at all. There was a special beautification reserve that money went into and, as far as 3 years of statements could show me, never really came out of, except in checks. I closed the binder that night and I sat in Walt's chair, and I did not feel triumphant. I felt something quieter and older than that. I had spent my life believing that if you just kept honest books, the truth would eventually be visible to anyone who bothered to look. And here was the proof. And the proof was ugly. And it meant this had never once been about a flower bed. It was about a man who'd built himself a little kingdom with a clipboard and a fine schedule, and funded it out of the pockets of people he was sure would never read the fine print. The night of the annual meeting, the church basement was full. Roger had moved it to make us fail, and instead, he'd made us come. Sal drove a van load of seniors who didn't drive at night. Priya had spent 3 weeks collecting proxies from every neighbor who couldn't attend, a signed stack of them, because she knew, the way I know a balance sheet, that elections aren't won in the room. They're won in the paperwork before the room. When Denise from the management company counted heads and proxies for quorum, I watched Roger's face change. He'd needed us not to have the numbers. We had the numbers. He tried, I'll give him that. He tried to rule Priya's proxies out of order, and she read the bylaw that allowed them, out loud, calmly, and sat down. He tried to skip the election and move to adjourn, and Sal stood up on his bad hip and called for the vote the rules guaranteed us, and 40 people said second. And when the ballots for the 3 open seats were counted, one of them, the president's own chair, a bookkeeper, a paralegal, and a veteran with a cane, had each won by more than 2 to 1. The neighbors had shown up. The power, it turned out, really had been ours the whole time. We'd just never counted it before. The new board held its first meeting 10 minutes later. Right there, 3 new members and 2 of Roger's old silent ones, who suddenly discovered they'd had concerns all along. We elected a new president. It wasn't me, and that was on purpose, because I wanted the seat nobody thinks about, the one with the ledgers. I asked to be treasurer, and the board said yes. Then, in the space of 1 motion each, we repealed the invented flower bed rule, voided every fine levied without the hearing the covenants required, and directed the management company to release the lien on my home and every other lien Roger had recorded the same illegal way. And last, the motion I'd written out by hand and read without my voice shaking, we authorized an independent forensic audit of the association's books for the past 6 years. Roger did not stay to watch. He left when the election numbers were read, walked out of the basement into the parking lot, and I did not follow him. And nobody did, because the satisfying part was never going to be his face. It was going to be the ledger. The forensic accountant took about 2 months. She was thorough and dry, and I loved her because she talked the way I think. Her report was 30 pages, and it found what I'd smelled and more. Over roughly 3 of those 6 years, close to $60,000 had left the association through Greencrest Property Services for work that could not be documented and, in several cases, provably had not been done. The Special Beautification Reserve was a slush account, and a portion of the fine revenue, the money pried out of widows and young families and a crying retired teacher, had gone into it and back out again in checks to a company owned by the president's brother-in-law, approved by the president with no competing bids, in violation of the conflict of interest rules Roger himself had signed. Now here is the part where our story stopped being about revenge and became about something colder and better, which is process. Because the new board did not march to Roger's house with torches, we did 3 boring, devastating things. We filed a claim on the association's crime and fidelity insurance, the bond that exists precisely to cover a board officer who steals, which meant the neighborhood would get its money back, whether Roger ever paid a dime. We turned the forensic report over to the county district attorney's office, and we sent Roger, by certified mail, on association letterhead, in a window envelope, a formal demand for restitution. I did think about that envelope, I won't lie to you. The same letterhead, the same certified mail, the same tape on the same kind of door. I did not send it to be cruel. I sent it because it was correct, and because some symmetry in the universe balances whether you help it or not. And I have spent my whole life helping it. A man who mailed a grieving widow a bill every single morning received exactly 1 bill in return, and it was for everything. So here is what happened next, because I know that's why you're really still here. It's spring again. The irises are up. Walt's bed is exactly where he dug it, fieldstone and all, because the first act of the new board, before any of the money, before any of the rest, was to make sure of that. The lien on my house was released within the month, and the county recorded the release, and I have a copy of it in the binder, in its own tab, which I understand is a little ridiculous, and I don't care. Every improper fine was refunded, mine and the Hendersons and Diane's and all the rest, paid out of the insurance recovery. Diane cried again when her check came, but it was a different kind of crying, and she planted irises of her own. From a clump I split off Walt's, and so did Priya, and so did Sal, and so did the young couple with the chalk drawing kid. There is a purple line running down the front walks of my street now, house after house, the same flower a dying man planted for his mother. And last month the new board voted, unanimously, to make a spring planting day an official neighborhood event. The bed that was non-compliant is now the thing we're known for. As for Roger, last I heard the district attorney had charged him, and his attorney was negotiating a plea, and the court had entered an order requiring him to pay restitution of the full amount the forensic accountant found. He put his house up for sale in the fall and moved out over the winter, quietly, no clipboard, no white sedan cruising the streets at dusk looking for a trash can left out too long. The management company that never returned my calls was fired by the board I sit on. Greencrest Property Services is out of business. And the new landscaping contract, competitively bid, 3 companies, real invoices with real line items, is reviewed every single month by the treasurer, who reads everything, down to the fine print, twice. I still visit Walt on Sundays, and I tell him about the meetings, which he would have found hilarious. Quiet Carol running the numbers on a whole neighborhood. But I think the thing he'd have liked most is the one I didn't plan. The only paper taped to my front door these days is a flyer, printed by a teenager down the street on a home printer, reminding everyone that planting day is the 2nd Saturday in May. Bring a trowel, irises provided. No letterhead, no envelope, no fine, just an invitation on the door where the threat used to be. If there's a lesson in it, and I don't much like lessons, it's only this. Quiet is not the same as weak, and reading the fine print is not the same as making trouble. And the smallest, most boring person in the room is very often the one holding the whole thing together, or, if it comes to it, the one who can take it apart. He thought he'd picked the one house that wouldn't fight. He picked the one that kept the books. If this one meant something to you, do me a small favor and let me know you're out there, the way my neighbors finally did for me. A like or a subscribe, so more of these find the people who need them. And I'm genuinely curious what you think, because not everyone agrees. Was it right to do it the slow way? Run for the board, take the seat, open the books? Or should I have marched straight to the police the morning I first smelled the missing money? Tell me honestly what you'd have done. And while you're down there, I'd love to know what state you're all listening from tonight and how old you are, because I have a feeling more of you have a Roger on your street than would ever admit it. Stay in your seat. Read the fine print. I'll see you in the next one.